So I would do an Edward Elric vs. Aang prediction, but that's taking a while. So before that, I'm going to tackle the Death Battle announced at the Death Battle RTX panel. DragonZord vs. MechaGodzilla. As a huge fan of Godzilla, I do have some words to say. First off, I don't know which MechaGodzilla they're using. I don't remember if they stated, and they didn't show the animation to people outside of the people who are actually there. I'm hoping for the animation they'll represent it with Kiryu, because that version has the most mobility and is primed for the most options in animation. You know, because unlike the first two, he's got an actually useful tail and proper articulation. And unlike the anime one, he's not a fucking city. But to cover my bases, we'll be discussing all 4 MechaGodzillas seen on film, because I don't think Death Battle are going to tackle the comics, which is understandable. First off, Showa MechaGodzilla, from Godzilla vs. MechaGodzilla and Terror of MechaGodzilla. MechaGodzilla was an alien creation that disguised itself as the Showa-era Godzilla, made by the Black Hole Planet 3 aliens, and if you think that's a stupid name, then you're absolutely correct. And if you don't, then it's gonna have a classic Godzilla fan in my audience. Did you know they're alternatively known as the Universe Black Hole Planet 3 aliens? And yeah, I know people call them simians, but you know what, that makes sense. Anyway, this MechaGodzilla's most notable accomplishments include the trouncing of King Caesar and Anguirus, one being a mystical guardian deity, and the other being a giant dinosaur monster creature thing. Then MechaGodzilla also went on to overpower the Showa Godzilla. MechaGodzilla is armed with the creatively named Space Beam from his eyes, and the somehow even less creatively named laser firing apparatus on his backup head. He has missiles that can fire from his fingers, knees and toes, some even having drilling abilities that he can make track down enemies with his neck-mounted tracking device. He has a badly animated cross-attack beam from his uni nipple, an unseen but mentioned in a guidebook uni-stock blade in his tail that acts as a flight stabilizer and can be taken out to be made into a stabby tool, the 500,000 degrees Celsius Desto fire, which is only shown at the game. I don't think that counts. And he is made of space titanium, which is 10 times stronger than steel, something that I think is definitely a lie because I don't think steel can survive the stuff he did. At least none of to say that multiplying his strength by 10 would matter. He can also fly, create barriers around him that can block energy weapons and physical attacks, and as a backup head, in case you take his first one off. He doesn't really have any weaknesses. His first one was rendered not a weakness, and his second one is a cyborg named Katsura Mifune. I don't think that one can be factored into the fight, but you know, if you kill him, MechaGodzilla's useless. So what's MechaGodzilla 1's stat line? Well, by simply ramming, he can output 13.84 kilotons of force, he can easily damage Anguirus, who could survive 3.51 kilotons of force like it was nothing, and Godzilla's atomic breath has been calculated to 31.9 kilotons. MechaGodzilla is even stronger than them, meaning his durability and offense are likely higher than 31.9 kilotons. So that's the original MechaGodzilla. Now we can talk about Super MechaGodzilla from the Heisei series. I would have called him MechaGodzilla 2, but technically MechaGodzilla 2 is the name of MechaGodzilla from Terror of MechaGodzilla. It would make no sense for this one to be MechaGodzilla 2 in a world with only one MechaGodzilla. The Heisei MechaGodzilla from Godzilla vs. MechaGodzilla 2, that 2 is not the name of MechaGodzilla, it's just there because this is the third MechaGodzilla film, was built from the remains of Mecha King Ghidorah, to counter Godzilla from the Heisei saga. And in case you're wondering, this is the strongest version of MechaGodzilla. This MechaGodzilla has the Mega Buster, yes that's what it's called, able to match Heisei Godzilla's own atomic breath, an eye-based laser cannon, a set of shock anchors for the G-Crusher system that impale and electrocute enemies from within, paralyzer missiles that can stun fuels and blow up, tranquilizers that blow up, and the plasma grenade that converts radiation fire at him into plasma energy that can one-shot fire Rodan and mortally wound Godzilla. It can also absorb plasma energy. He can also levitate to aid in his lacking agility, flight, and melee abilities. He has diamond coating on his armor that renders energy weapons below 1.2 million degrees Celsius completely useless, and Garuda's high-powered maser beams that allow him to fire even more weapons. This MechaGodzilla does however lack melee abilities and is vulnerable to intense heats. So why is MechaGodzilla the strongest? Well, Heisei Godzilla is one of the strongest Godzillas. In the film, directly prior to MechaGodzilla's, Godzilla was able to one-shot Batra with his atomic breath. Batra is supposed to be strong enough to stop a planet-busting meteor, and he scales to Mothra, who did destroy the planet-ending meteor. On the low end, assuming that it's only going to destroy the surface, that's a 32.78 teraton feat. On the high end, it's a 267 zettaton feat. That's impressive considering Godzilla can one-shot the guy who did that. And yes, Batra scales to Mothra, she and him are pretty well equal, and she did that, and Batra was supposed to do that, they're clearly equal. And then MechaGodzilla matched that same Godzilla, and that same blast even, and forced Godzilla to get even stronger to take him down. And before you say, but human constructions being planet level is dumb, here's the weaker mech made from the remains of MechaGodzilla, Mogira, being able to damage Space Godzilla, a guy who was born from cells being in black holes exposed to supernovas. Yeah. Now let's talk about the last one. That's good. The best looking one, Big Daddy Kiryu himself. The modified Type 3 Kiryu from Godzilla vs MechaGodzilla and Godzilla Tokyo SOS is the coolest fucking MechaGodzilla ever, and I will have no arguments. This MechaGodzilla was built around the bones of the original 1954 Godzilla to defend against this timeline's Godzilla. He has Type 99 double maser cannons in his mouth that are 2.4 times stronger than regular maser cannons, wrist-mounted Type 4 railguns that can be removed to show blades, a maser blade to stab people that aren't in his Type 4 railguns, only in the Type 0 railguns from the previous design, and a backpack that allows him to fly and ram people. It can even turn itself into a guided missile. It also contains Type 04 MRL-2 Mark IV rockets and Type 98 320mm multi-purpose guided missiles. But his ultimate weapon is the Absolute Zero Cannon, a beam that instantaneously freezes the target to absolute zero in one shot. Anything struck is instantly frozen on a molecular level, smashing the atoms and forcing it to collapse under its own weight. Unless it's Godzilla. After he was damaged, it got replaced by his triple hyper maser cannon, but let's be honest, the Zero Cannon's way cooler. I just realized that was a pun. As for how powerful he is, he can lift and throw the 2002 Godzilla, who weighs 25,000 metric tons, and his Absolute Zero Cannon freezes things with 0.55 petatons. Unlike other Ice Generation feats, this one's a bit more viable as it literally smashes atoms with that level of power, but I'm still a bit iffy. Finally, there's anime MechaGodzilla. This one is a fucking city. Now, normal anime MechaGodzilla has some really cool weapons. Look at this beautiful animation from... I can't read this. Well, just go check the link in the description. Unfortunately, none of this is canon. What is canon though is that he's made of nanometal that instantaneously regenerates his body and allows multiplication and assimilation of life forms. It has a nanometal particle diffusing type thermal energy buffer layer that diffuses 90% of the energy directed at it when an energy weapon targets it. It has some railguns as well. Unfortunately, its weakness is that it can be killed off if its head is destroyed, the head being the core of the city, and you can be sure as hell that it's the least agile of anything in this conversation. So how powerful is the DragonZord? It's fucking strong. It's got a drill on its tail tip, fingertip missiles, and that's it. It has consistently shown itself to be a match for the Dino Megazord. The Dino Megazord we can easily say is stronger than each individual ranger within it, who could do things like damage Rito Revolto, who tanks 666 gigatons like it was nothing. And they could briefly hold their own against Lord Zed, who can fastly overpower Rito Revolta, a character capable of destroying an island with 93 teratons, and has the power to move the moon with 158 zetatons of force. So if we say that the Megazord is a match for Rita, which I'm not completely sure of because I don't watch fucking Power Rangers, let's say the DragonZord, for the sake of argumentation, is at that level of power exactly. Can he match MechaGod? Yes. In fact, he stomps Showa Godzilla, who has no way to win. He stomps Kiryu, who might be able to win if he freezes the individual controlling the DragonZord, and if that individual is not in the DragonZord. But that would just be disabling the DragonZord. It would still be piloted if someone else just came and piloted it. And the DragonZord will also stomp MechaGodzilla City, unless somehow MechaGodzilla City could assimilate it, which I doubt it'd do because the DragonZord can just wipe out whatever continent MechaGodzilla City happens to be on. But then there's Heisei MechaGodzilla. This is where I get a little unsure. I can say that a low-balled Heisei MechaGodzilla is stronger than a potentially low-balled DragonZord. MechaGodzilla is 267 zetatons and the DragonZord is only 158 zetatons. But the thing is that I'm not sure that's the baseline of these characters. Keep in mind, MechaGodzilla matched Godzilla, who one-shot a creature that can tank that level of power. So MechaGodzilla could output far higher than 267 zetatons, and that's not counting Super MechaGodzilla with Garuda attached. Meanwhile, the DragonZord is likely stronger than Rita Repulsa by the end of its story. I'm not sure by how much though. And that's not counting the Mega DragonZord. So we're kind of in a rut here. It's possible that either could be 10 times stronger than I've stated, it's possible that maybe the DragonZord is actually equal. Although I'm a little tentative on the DragonZord being able to output that much power because I'm not sure how Rita's magic works. I'm sure people in the audience are tentative of me saying MechaGodzilla is that strong because it directly scales to two characters to be able to easily damage planet level ones. Even though that's completely normal power scaling, because if he wasn't capable of that, then the narrative would be completely different and that would mean the events of the film wouldn't happen at all, because if Mothra and Batra went planet level, they never would have woken up and that movie wouldn't have happened, and the planet-busting meteor would have hit and the world would end. If Godzilla wasn't planet level, then Batra wouldn't have died, and thus Batra and Mothra would have fought Space Godzilla, resulting in a completely different film. If MechaGodzilla wasn't planet level, then he would not have been able to pierce Godzilla's skin, meaning he never would have been able to destroy Godzilla's secondary brain, meaning Godzilla would never have gotten his red spiral ray, and thus he never would have gotten the power necessary to kill Space Godzilla, who, if he wasn't planet level, would never even survive the things that led to his creation, and thus he would never have existed at all. And Godzilla would likely never have gone meltdown, which means the last film would have never happened because Destroy likely would never be made, and if he wasn't, the world would have ended right there and then. So if you want to argue these characters aren't planet level, you'd also have to explain how everything in the Heisei era past versus King Ghidorah happened. Because the narrative hinges on them all being stronger or equal to Mothra and Batra, who hinge on being planet level so that, well, the world doesn't end. Now, if we assume the DragonZord and Super MechaGodzilla were equal, then who'd win? Well, they both have advantages over the other that makes it a bit difficult to fetch an answer for. The DragonZord has superior melee abilities, because it actually has some. It also lacks plasma and energy-based weapons, so MechaGodzilla wouldn't be able to utilize their strongest weapon. And due to it being less than half as tall as MechaGodzilla, it'd be hard for its opponent to get a hit, while it'd be able to throw itself at MechaGodzilla quite easily. It's also a machine, so it won't be tranquilized or paralyzed by the secondary effects of MechaGodzilla's missiles. Although they're still missiles, so they'd still hurt. MechaGodzilla's advantages are mostly based in that it has a shitload of weapons. A mouth laser, eye lasers, shock attacks, shitloads of missiles, and there's the ability to hover above the ground, which against something so much smaller than it does give it an advantage. So I think that this hypothetical being equal situation can only really come down to how far apart they are at the start. If the DragonZord gets close, he'll be able to do some serious damage before MechaGodzilla can hover far enough away from it. But if MechaGodzilla gets to fire its whole arsenal at the DragonZord from afar, the DragonZord's going to soak in a shitload of damage before it can get close enough to melee. And I really doubt those finger missiles will help much. So who would win? Well, it's a bit hard to say if it's MechaGodzilla from the Heisei series. It's quite a close fight. Unless the DragonZord isn't stronger than Rita, because if that is not the case, and the calc for Rita is correct and accurate to use, then MechaGodzilla stomps. The DragonZord wouldn't have enough attack power to even damage MechaGodzilla. However, if it's any of the other MechaGodzillas, the DragonZord stomps. And composite MechaGodzilla? It destroys the DragonZord. Are you crazy? Giving a machine the stats of Heisei MechaGodzilla, outfitted with all of the other weapons, the agility and speed of Kiryu, and the regeneration of MechaGodzilla City? That'd be idiotic. Don't do that, Death Battle. Seriously.